Hey friends, and welcome back to the Golden Hour, the new content series from us here at the Horizon League. I'm Sean Sullivan, so good to have you with us. What a treat we have for you here on episode 4, as our commissioner Julie Rowe Lach sits down with the NCAA president, Charlie Baker. It's one-on-one with the president next on the Golden Hour.
Welcome to the Horizon League Golden Hour podcast. President Charlie Baker, we're really excited to have you here in the worldwide Horizon League headquarters in downtown Indianapolis. We're excited to share
Indy with the NCAA.
A short walk
from my apartment.
That's right. Yep. And it's not too far of a walk to the NCAA headquarters
Correct.
as well,
Yep.
but not on a day like today. So a little Indiana rain today for you. Well, I've had fun preparing for this because I got to learn more about you. Of course, I've been in meetings with you, but I got to learn more about your path here, and I'm going to go way back here in the time machine. I read that you actually built a basketball court in your backyard.
With my brothers.
That included railroad tiles. This wasn't just pour some concrete and supervise that. This was all in.
This was all in. First of all, my dad designed it, okay? And his theory was he would design it, pay for the materials, and then his 3 boys would do all the work. And and so the first thing that showed up was a dump truck that dumped a whole bunch of railroad ties in the driveway. And
did you know those were coming, by the way?
Yeah, because he walked us through the plan. And the plan was basically we're all going to have to kind of dig a trench in the backyard that was behind the garage. It was kind of a rectangular space. And then the railroad ties show up, and you put those on a wheelbarrow, and you take them out, and you line them all up along the edge of the trench, right? That becomes kind of the foundational opportunity. Then you get what I would call sort of heavy gravel dumped in the driveway, big piles of it. You wheelbarrow that in, you lay it, spread it all out. Then you get kind of a less large dump of gravel, and then you get kind of the really fine stuff that goes across the top, and then it's like literally like a layer cake, right? And then on top of that, and sort of up along the edge all the way around of the railroad ties, you put in the blacktop, and that gets dumped in the driveway. Actually, that doesn't get dumped in the driveway. That gets the dump truck with the blacktop in it shows up, and they flip the thing up, and then your wheelbarrow here, and then you go in, you dump it all out, and then you roll it all out, and then you paint it, put the lines on it. And my dad had an incredibly clever way of putting basketball hoops up on either side of it and nets along the side so that the balls didn't end up in the neighbor's yard. And we used to have dozens of kids over there all the time. It was like an outdoor available pretty much day and night. We had lights on the trees.
That's great.
Gymnasium for people to play in. And the best part about it was the people who bought the house a few years ago. My parents moved out many years ago, but they bought the house, and they decided they didn't like the basketball court. They wanted to put a garden out there, so they hired a contractor. The guy said, "I'll just come over with a bobcat, and we'll just flip up all that concrete. That won't really be a problem, all that blacktop." And he gets over there, and he puts the bobcat into the thing, and he hits the button, and the bobcat literally flips over. And he was like, "Oh, my God, what's going on here?" And then he starts digging around, and he realizes, oh, Lord, just getting rid of the old basketball court will probably cost more than any other part of the project. We're all very proud of that.
Yeah, you should be.
Right.
Built to last, right?
Built to last. Thing would survive, thing could survive almost anything. Yeah.
As it should. So I'm sure you have many good memories from on that court. What's one?
The biggest memory was the fact that it was literally like a gathering place for everybody who played. And my mom used to joke that she would come home, and she ran a Christian education program in our local church, and she would come home from work, and there would be 20 kids out there playing basketball, and there'd be kids in the kitchen drinking Gatorade and all the rest, and none of them would be hers. It was just, this is where everybody went to play.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, that theme is even bigger than the theme I drew it from. Because when I read about it, I thought you really showed obviously grit. You had to build the court with your brother's help, your dad's design, but nonetheless, when I read that you were literally using the wheelbarrow to take tar and pour it into the court, that's not an easy job to obviously get to where you want to go.
No, it's a mess.
So then I fast forward and I read where you talked about your collegiate sports career, and one of the real lessons you learned was humility. And I believe, and this is why I still work in college sports, this is the best leadership lab we have going. You think about all the lessons that, in Horizon League, we have nearly 4,000 student athletes. I get to see them when I'm at championships, regular season competition, and I see the grit. I see the theme that I've continued to read and see from you is resilience. Because your collegiate career, you're on the team, you take a year off as team manager, you're back on the team, that's resilience. Your political career.
I took a year off because my academic performance was
okay, I was crediting you for other reasons.
Suitable.
Well, at Harvard, had to be a little tough.
It was.
I'll give you a little grace there.
First year was a little rocky. Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
But then you move to your political career. You run for governor. You lose. A lot of people would say that's it. You said, no, I'm going to learn from it. You took some harsh feedback, and then you won. And when you left, it appears as though you are still one of the most popular governors that our country has had because of your bipartisanship and your ability to really get things done regardless of party affiliation.
I had a whole bunch of people who said to me, geez, what if you just run in 14 when it was an open seat instead of running in 10? You could have run once and won in 14. And the bottom line is if we'd run in 14, we would have lost. And even though it was an open seat, and the reason we would have lost is we didn't learn the lessons we learned from losing in 2010.
Wow.
And it was, it's kind of a publicly humiliating exercise to engage in a campaign like that and lose, especially when people think it was winnable. But that little trek I did to talk to everybody who covered the race and all the smart people and blah blah blah, I got all that really great feedback. As rugged as that all was, they were right for the most part. And the biggest lesson I got from it was one guy who was a sales guy who said to me, "You spend too much time talking to your customers and not enough time talking to your prospects." And his point was, first-time candidate, you're more comfortable in front of an audience of people you think you've already got, as opposed to being in front of an audience of people you have to win. And so when I ran the second time, I campaigned in a lot of places I knew I was going to lose. But the goal wasn't to turn everybody. The goal was to be there, show up, hear them out, make my pitch, and learn from the experience. And it made me a way better candidate than I would have been otherwise. And we lost those areas by a little less than we lost them by in 10, and we only won by a small amount. So I really do think the lessons you learn in defeat, if you actually pay attention, will make you better.
Well, that's
and I'm with you all the way on the sports is an enormously powerful human development machine.
Yeah.
And I've talked to thousands of kids since I got this job, and they make me feel better about the future. They understand what it means to be a teammate. They understand the grit and the grind. They absolutely understand that success is a process, and maybe even most importantly, they are constantly being challenged by their teammates, by the folks they play, and that humility that you talked about is always there. And people get a lot farther in life believing they have a lot to learn and can get better. And that's probably one of the biggest and most important things sports will teach you. And I say that as a father of, I played sports. My brother played baseball in college. My wife was a gymnast at Northwestern. She's the best athlete in the family. Our two boys both played D3 football. I mean, all of us would say that sports was one of the most centering and important parts of our development.
Yeah, well said. And you've seen it firsthand at all levels. So it seems as though you took that listening tour experience into your NCAA presidency, because you certainly did it. You've done it with the Horizon League now twice, but you embarked on a listening tour with 90 conferences.
97, I think.
97.
Yeah.
Just talk about that and what were probably the two
I think
biggest
it might
things you learned?
it might be 96 now. I think there was a merger in there somewhere.
You're probably right.
Yeah. I said when I took the job that I wanted to meet with all the conferences in my first 100 days, which was silly. Ambitious,
maybe a few more
but
days.
silly. I got to everybody in the first 150 days or so, and basically said I wanted to talk to everybody once a year. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is having had leadership positions before, I always worry about the ivory tower, and the fact that a lot of the time when you're in charge, the people around you are going to tell you what they think you want to hear, and you got to get past them and talk to the people who are actually on the ground. And a number of the initiatives that we've embarked on came straight out of those conversations. And somebody told me the other day that they were talking to a whole bunch of folks in college sports. I can't remember where the gathering was, but they asked, on my behalf, one of the questions they asked was, how many of you have had a chance to talk to the president of the NCAA? And basically everybody in the room put their hand up. And that's important to me.
Yeah, it is important. And I thank you for doing it and encourage you to keep doing it because I know our membership appreciates it. One I know major challenge you took on as the Massachusetts governor was tackling the transportation system. $1 billion system, you had to put billions into it. I couldn't help but think about you took the NCAA presidency job knowing that our model needed overhauled. So I don't know if this is a which is easier, which is harder question, but just compare, contrast. You took on this huge challenge of major transportation for the city of the state, and now you are trying to overhaul in a collaborative way, I wouldn't even call it a democracy, right? A nonprofit association membership where you don't have a vote, but you have incredible influence.
Yeah, the difference between this job, to some extent, and the other job was there were defined lines of responsibility for a governor. All right. This really, as I say all the time to people, that I have influence, much more so. My job is much more about influence than it is about actually having my hand on the so-called tiller. And I think that's challenging, but I also think it's consistent with what the people who created the NCAA were seeking to do in the first place, which was to establish, a membership-driven organization. Now, that doesn't mean you're allowed to blame the membership if something doesn't go right. It means you have to own up and live, up to the responsibility that anybody on our team has to try to make sure the membership makes the best decisions they can on behalf of the membership and the future of college sports. I think the scale of it is just nuts. I mean, that to me is probably the most interesting and unanticipated element of it. I mean, you say the words 500,000 student athletes in 1,100 schools, all 50 states, and, it just kind of rolls out and it's like, but then when you actually come face to face with that, you want to meet with all the conferences in the first 100 days. It's gigantic,
right? And
across all three divisions, and you got some schools spending $300 million on sports. You got some spending 10. Everybody's sort of trying to figure out what their place in space is. An enormous legal docket that really was way past anything I was familiar with, even in my previous life.
Right.
And so I would say it's a more challenging gig in many ways than the governor one. The other advantage I had in that previous role was I had spent 8 years serving in the cabinets of two governors previously. I was Secretary of Health and Human Services and Secretary of Administration and Finance in the 90s for two governors. So state government to me was a very familiar animal. I didn't grow up in college sports as an adult.
Right.
So
or even
for
higher
me,
ed.
Right. So for me, I that was one of the reasons why I was so surprised when this friend of mine called me up and said, I was thinking about nominating you. I got called by the search committee that's doing the search for the next NCAA president, and I was thinking about nominating you. And I was like, why? I mean, and he said, well, it's a very complicated organization. It's got a lot of committees. It's feels and looks a little bit like legislation. I said, fine, happy to talk to him. Love college sports. And eventually ended up getting the offer. But it was that part of it, just the learning associated with the players, of which there are many, has been a challenge.
Many, and they keep changing.
Yeah,
And
and
all the
reorganizing.
stakeholders, right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not going to ask you to focus anymore on the current challenges because, as you said, there's a lot of them. Our city and state of Indiana recently rolled out through the Indiana Sports Corp our 2050 vision, sports strategy. We're excited about it. One of the pillars relates to keeping and attracting more sport leadership organizations like the NCAA, which just celebrated 25 years here in Indy. As we embarked on that process, thinking about 2050, it was a bit audacious and even intimidating. And then we started working backwards, 2040, 2030. How can we really achieve this vision and what does that path look like? And we're still working on it. As you think about where college sports is today, and if I can ask you to, I won't go all the way to 2050, but let's say 2040. It's the holiday season. I'll give you two big gifts here. We're going to assume the settlement gets approved in April, so a short-term gift. And then within whatever time frame you want, we get the congressional action that we need for the special student athlete status.
So you're basically saying that kind of the two biggest sort of external elements
where we need
basically
some help,
get resolved.
settled, at least resolved.
Yeah.
And we'll say through the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So then where do you see and where do you want to see, what's your vision for college sports as we look out to 2040?
Well, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that something you and I both talked about before. This is a really good thing, not for young people alone, but for their growth and their development and their ultimate capacity to achieve and perform and succeed later in life in whatever it is they choose to do. So for me, one of the main goals is, and one of my biggest aspirations would be that we continue to have plus or minus 500,000 young people doing this every year.
Keep the opportunities there.
And learning the lessons that you learned and I learned and millions of other people have learned. I think the three biggest challenges will be dealing with the sort of big money schools, big money sports, and kind of everybody else. Yeah. Which is not a new issue.
Right.
But I think the settlement to some extent creates a vehicle to acknowledge it, which I think is really important because it's kind of not been acknowledged. And I think that's part of why we ended up in so many interesting legal situations. The second thing I would say is that we've had a terrific run in growing women's sports. And I think it's really important that we continue to build on that success. I mean, I don't need to tell anybody who's going to see this that in volleyball, in basketball, in softball, in gymnastics, in the Olympics, if you look at the performance of women's sports and the buy-in from the public to be profoundly excited about that in a way that historically has been harder to achieve. This thing is like, a lightning bolt right now. And, and huge portions of the women who end up in leadership positions in every kind of category you can possibly think of later in life played sports. I mean, it's exactly the same dynamic that you see play out with young men and grown men. And for me, that has to be part of the way we think about this.
Could not agree more. And that's frankly part of why Indiana wants to be the capital of women's sports. That's our fifth pillar of this 2050 because, as we've said, it's not just a moment, it's a movement.
It is, totally.
It's I like your lightning bolt
People
point.
can see it. They can do it, right?
Yes.
The whole game on this has changed. Caitlin Clark, just think about how many kids out there right now who never heard of Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese or Juju Watkins or Paige Beckers or a whole bunch of these other, or Aaliyah Boston or a whole bunch of these other sort of transcendent players are out there doing the work every single day so that they can be that person.
Amen.
10 years from now.
I've got a couple in my
great
house.
stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
so it's
How many people started swimming because Katie Ledecky
seriously.
just couldn't be beaten? It's that momentum has to be sustained.
And when you think about 2040, the explosion of women's sports is just going to continue.
Yeah. And by the
that'll
way,
be-
Indianapolis is, I think that's a great strategy, and Indianapolis and Indiana have done a spectacular job of delivering on it already, if you just think about all the stuff that goes on here now. But it's also, you have you're located right in the middle of the country. The airport is one of the easiest, and I've been in and out of a lot of airports. It's one of the easiest airports in the country to get in and out of. The trip to downtown doesn't take very long. The downtown is organized in a way that you would have to be almost you would have to pay no attention at all not to understand how welcoming and organized the downtown is for sports and entertainment. And I think you guys have a great future there.
Well, thank you.
And I think that's part. We're not bringing the men's and women's basketball tournaments back to Indianapolis again and again because you're next door to our headquarters. We're doing it because it's the right place in many respects for it to continue to be, along with many of the other places we have it, because you have all the assets and all the enthusiasm and all the experience to make it special for the kids and the teams and the fans.
And we love to host here, both Horizon League as one of the hosts, but more importantly, our city and state. So we thank the NCAA all the time for trusting us. We tell Dan Gavitt, Joanne Scott, Lynn Holzman, thank you, because it matters. Okay, we are...
And where else? And where did the Big Ten decide to have its annual football championship?
Yeah, and by the way, Horizon League, we're going to have our 6th championship here this year, basketball.
Terrific.
Same deal. This is our home because the city we have 30 people that meet in our office that you just saw once a month just to talk about how to plan that championship. Where else but Indy does that happen? Okay, it's time for some turkey time here. We're close to the holidays. So in the spirit of your love for basketball, I'm going to give you some items, and you're going to tell me which one you're going to start, which one you're going to bench, and which one you're going to cut.
Jeez, okay. All right.
Start, bench, and cut. This is easy. Mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, or stuffing? Thanksgiving table.
I'm gonna start mashed potatoes. I'm gonna bench stuffing, and I'm gonna what was the third one?
Cut.
And I'm gonna cut sweet potatoes.
Yeah, we've got roster limits, so you're going to have to cut something here. Okay. All right, we're going to move into more traditional veggies. Corn, green bean casserole, or yams?
Green bean casserole starts, corn gets benched, and the yams are just gone.
Okay, we're in overtime now.
These are not necessarily the decisions that would be made in my house.
Right, this is you.
Just
You're the
me.
head coach.
Just
You're the
me.
head coach
Yeah,
here.
okay.
We're in overtime. Pumpkin pie, pecan pie, Boston cream pie.
I think pumpkin pie is by far the most appropriate for that particular holiday. So we're going to start that. We'll probably put the pecan pie on the bench, and Boston cream pie that's not a thing. That's not a Thanksgiving dessert. So that one's going to get cut.
All right, we'll save it for the next holiday then. Thank you for your time. This
nice
has been a
to see
pleasure.
you.
Good to see you
Yep.
too. Appreciate your
And
leadership.
good luck with the season.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that conversation between Commissioner Julie Rowe Lach and NCAA President Charlie Baker as much as we did. Thanks to the NCAA staff and President Baker for making time to join us here at the headquarters in downtown Indianapolis of the Horizon League. Let's keep talking about what's happening around the league, and we will start with the men's soccer championship. RMU, the Colonials, take home the championship in men's soccer. They head to the NCAA tournament where they'll return to Michigan, where they won that Horizon League championship at Oakland by taking on the Michigan Wolverines in NCAA tournament play. We wish the Colonials the best of luck. Speaking of championships, women's volleyball, the Horizon League volleyball championships will take place at the highest seed, that's the top seed, Wright State in Dayton. The top 6 teams in the regular season in the league head to Dayton for that championship this weekend. Wright State the clear favorite already with golden hour wins earlier this season over Miami and Ohio State. Basketball. It's always top of mind in the Horizon League. Non-league action continues. Make sure you stay tuned to all the action on ESPN+. We also want to give a shout out to our Vallejo all-academic team members in volleyball. You can read more about that all-academic team from our friends at Vallejo at horizonleague.com. For merchandise, schedules, news, features, life in the league information, make sure you keep it locked into all of our social channels at Horizon League and our official website, horizonleague.com. From all of us here at the Horizon League, thanks for joining us here on episode 4 of the Golden Hour. You can subscribe, follow, download on all the channels across the websites and podcast homes where you get your podcasts, or by visiting horizonleague.com/golden hour, where you can link to those right now. Take care, everybody. Make a major impact in whatever you're doing.